empowerment to achieve the impossible because of the mercy of the spiritual master. In fact, there's a beautiful example which is there in this connection. Once Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was traveling on a boat with some of his disciples, and there were some followers and some, general Vaishnavas who were there on that boat. So it was a boat with that engine which makes a lot of sound. And they were crossing the Ganga to go to some other place for preaching. And one of the followers who was there, he approached Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he asked that your guru was actually a Bhajananandi saint. But how come you are a Ghoshti Anandi saint and you are going everywhere and preaching? Like a lion, you are preaching to everybody. But your Guru Maharaj never preached. He was a Bhajananandi saint. He was just doing his bhajan. He was keeping to himself. Hardly people heard any lectures or anything like that from him. So how come you are doing this? Can you explain that to me? And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave a very beautiful analogy at that time. He said that, can you see this engine, this motor of this boat? It is making so much noise right now. Especially if you go to Bengal, you see those boats which are there, not like the, sophisticated ships like Spirit of Tasmania, which are silent. But if you see to Bengal, there's that whole that sound comes and the diesel fumes are coming out. Even now, if we want to travel and cross the Ganga. So he said that, can you see this engine, how much noise it is making, that sound it's coming. But can you see that battery in the background? So the battery is the main powerhouse which is empowering this motor to, make the boat run. But that battery is sitting very silently. So he said, I am like this motor who is just making sound, but I'm getting all my power from this battery which is silent, which doesn't, speak up or which doesn't make any noise at all. So that is what my Guru Maharaj is. Although he is a Bhajananandi saint, he himself did not preach so much, like giving lectures and going out and preaching. But I'm getting all my empowerment from him. And that is why I'm able to go and preach or open centers or make disciples, try to make people Krishna conscious and followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is what Brahaspati explained to Indra. He said that at this moment there is no point in fighting with the demons because they are extremely powerful, having been blessed by their Guru Maharaj, Shukracharya, and having served all the Brahmanas. So the blessings of the Guru can make them achieve the impossible right now, and they will definitely be able to conquer over you. So right now, Jaan bacha ke bhago. Jaan bacha ke bhago means save your life and run from here. That's the instruction which Brihaspati gives to Indra and all the demigods. So Indra and all the demigods go away from there. But before they go away, they ask Brihaspati. They say that what, then are we permanently losing my kingdom? I have done 100 Ashwamedha Yagyas to become the king of the demigods. And am I going to permanently lose this position as the king of the demigods? And Brihaspati said, because he could see into the future. So he said, no, I can see into the future and I can see that this same Bali Maharaj is going to do an offense to his spiritual master. And because he will do that offense to his spiritual master, he is going to lose whatever material wealth he has obtained, and you will regain your position back. But for now, just go underground and hide wherever you can hide. So that is the second lesson. If we offend our spiritual master or you offend the Vaishnavas, one loses all their power. Obviously, in Bari Maharaj's pastime, there is a higher purpose, which we will also understand later. But the underlying principle is Vaishnava offense and Guru Aprad. And therefore, we see the third offense, when we chant the 10 offenses in the morning, the third offense that we chant every day is to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. So we know from the famous pastime is there of Karna. So Karna was there. He was obviously a very, very empowered Kshatriya. But no one was ready to teach him the Vidya. Because that time he was known as Sutaputra. He was the son of a chariot driver. So he goes to spiritual master, like to gurus, to learn Vidya from them, but they are not ready to teach him. And then ultimately he approaches Parshuram. And then Parshuram says, no, I only teach Brahmins. That is my vow. So I don't teach anybody else. And what did Karna do? Because he was desperate to get Vidya, he lied to Parshuram. And he said, no, I'm a Brahman. So then Parshuram taught him all the Vidya, all the Dhanur Vidya, power of fighting, everything. Parshuram imparted knowledge to him. And once Parshuram was actually lying down and resting, and he had put his head on Karna's lap. And that time there was an insect which came, like I think a scorpion or something that came, and it bit Karna in the thigh. And obviously a lot of blood started oozing out, and it was extremely painful, that bite which he got. And if somebody else, ordinary person would have been there, they would have actually like jumped up and be jumping in pain because he was getting so much blood and so much pain. But Karna just tolerated it because his spiritual master Parshuram was sleeping in his lap. So he did not say anything. And then when Parshuram woke up, he saw there was so much blood on the floor. Blood was oozing out of that wound which the scorpion had inflicted on Karna's thigh. And that time Parshuram said, he said that this, tolerance of pain, generally Brahmanas don't have. So we see Brahmanas are generally very soft. Brahmana bhojana priya. They like to eat, they like to preach, but generally they are soft. They are not tough like the Kshatriyas. So he said that this particular tolerance which is there to pain can only be there in Kshatriyas. It cannot be there in Brahmanas. So you have definitely lied to me. You are a Kshatriya and you try to get this vidya from me by cheating, by kapat. By deceit, you try to get this vidya from me. So you've already obtained it from me. I've given you most of the vidya, but I curse you that when you need it the most, that time you will forget everything. So see, the offense of to the spiritual master, it came true. When Karna needed it the most, when Arjuna was attacking him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he forgot all that vidya. And ultimately, Arjuna was able to kill Karna. So, when we say, Guru Aprad or offense to the Vaishnavas, the word offense itself has, off and fence. So, it is said that our Krishna consciousness becomes off and the fence of protection which the Vaishnavas and the Guru give us, that actually comes down when we do offenses to devotees or to the spiritual master. And Jiva Goswami has mentioned, about whom also we'll discuss later because it's his appearance day as well. But Jiva Goswami has mentioned that once a person commits 100 offenses, he loses his determination and his taste to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And then if he continues offending and he does around 1,000 offenses, then he starts breaking the 4 regulative principles. And over there also, if he still doesn't stop and he keeps making offenses and he goes to beyond 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 like that offenses, then he will leave Krishna consciousness and he will go away. He will leave chanting and he will leave the association of devotees and he'll go away. And once Bhurijan Prabhu was mentioning in a class, in one of the retreats, he said that sometimes when devotees leave Krishna consciousness and go away, it is not that they have made that choice. Oh, I left Krishna consciousness, it did not suit me, or I did not like it there, or I could not get along with someone. So he said, no, Krishna has actually kicked the Guru. So generally a person does not make a choice to leave Krishna consciousness. So it is not that the person said, oh, I made that choice, I couldn't tolerate it, I couldn't get along, or I couldn't take the whole philosophy or whatever. So Bhurijan Prabhu said, no, it's because of offenses. And that's same thing which we are seeing Jiva Goswami saying. That once you make, more than 1,000 offenses, you leave Krishna consciousness and you go away. You leave chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So therefore it is said that, we have, community gives immunity. So when we are in the community of devotees, when we are surrounded by this fence of devotees, it actually gives us immunity to Maya. Then it gives us that immunity that we will not fall down, we will not go away from Krishna consciousness, not stop following the 4 regulative principles or lose our taste and determination to chant. So that is the second lesson we learn from this pastime, that if you offend your Guru or if you offend the Vaishnavas, you are going to lose all the empowerment that was there with you. And you will slowly, gradually go away from Krishna consciousness. So we see that, Brahaspati assures them that in the future you will get everything back, but for now you'll just go underground. So then all the demigods and headed by Indra just go helter-skelter and they take shelter here and there and they are hiding. And Bali Maharaj has conquered the heavenly kingdom and he's now ruling over the entire planetary systems. He's become the king of the whole universe. So he was ruling over there, but at the same time, who was getting a bit distressed because of the situation of the demigods? The mother. Because the mother is generally very worried about her children. And over here, we see Aditi, who's the mother of all the demigods. She was getting very extremely upset and distressed. And she was feeling very sad that my sons, who are the kings of the heavenly kingdom, who are the kings of the heaven, they have to just live like beggars somewhere here and there. They are homeless right now. So she is very worried and when Kashyapa Muni, her husband, comes back from his meditation, she actually requests him. She says that you are not only my husband, you are my spiritual master. Right now I'm very worried and upset that our children have no shelter. Where have they? They are just staying here and there. They've lost their power. They've lost their home. So can you please do something so that they can regain their lost power and kingdom? Now Kashyapa Muni was a great sage. So he knew that this is all material, acquisitions, and Aditi is getting very attached to her sons who are within this material world. So he actually first tries to preach to her. He says that just leave it, it's okay. They will find figure out things themselves. You don't, because I am your husband, you are accepting me as your spiritual master. This is not the goal of life, that your children get back their heavenly kingdom or they get back their home. The goal of life is self-realization. So he first tries to preach to Aditi like that, but he sees that Aditi is ultimately not getting pacified. And same thing we see in Maharaj Chitraketu's pastime, which is the pastime going on. We are concluding that pastime soon. That Narada Muni and Angira Muni knew that Chitraketu Maharaj was so attached that he wants a son, that they did not preach the philosophy first to him, because they knew he will not accept him. They first blessed him with a son, and through the whole pastime of losing the son, then they were able to preach to Maharaj Chitraketu, and then his consciousness turned. He was more receptive to Krishna conscious philosophy. So in the same way, Kashyapa Muni realized that Aditi is not receptive right now because her heart is aggrieved. She is very upset and she is crying for her children who've lost their homes. So then he says, okay, I'll have to give her something by which she is doing something wherein she can still attract the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he instructs her to do the vrata called as Payovrata sacrifice. And in that Payovrata sacrifice, I think it's done for 21 days. It's described in the Bhagavatam. And just drink cow's milk for the 21 days. Every day you serve the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas. And then on the 21st day, you conclude your sacrifice. So Aditi very faithfully, she was actually an intelligent lady and she understood what she had to be done once Kashyapa Muni gave her the instructions. So she very faithfully performed the whole Payovrata sacrifice. And at the end of the sacrifice, she got darshan of Lord Vishnu himself. Lord Vishnu came to bless her, and that time she prayed to Lord Vishnu. She said that my children have lost their homes. Can you please help so that they can get their homes back? So Vishnu was also actually, not wanting to bless in a way that, he's trying to fulfill the material desires, but he agrees somehow. And he says, okay, I will appear and I will help your children get their lost kingdom back. So then from the heart of Aditi, he appears, the Lord appears as Vamandev, as a little dwarf Brahman. And when Vamandev appears, he straight away appears as a little child, as a 5-year-old child he appears, and very, very beautiful to look at. And we see on Srila Prabhupada's 8th canto, there is that beautiful picture of Vamandev, and very attractive, he was very attractive. So when he appears, there are so many demigods who come to bless Vamandev. And they all come and bestow blessings on him and give him various gifts, which are described in detail in the Bhagavatam. So I will not go into what all everybody gave, but some of the main gifts he received were, Surya Dev comes and gives him the Gayatri mantra. Then Mother Earth, Bhumi Devi, gives him the deer skin. And his father, Kashyapa Muni, gives him, I think he gives him the straw mat on which he would then, and the Uttarya, the chadar to cover his body. And Saraswati Devi gives him the Rudraksh Mala of Vidya. And I think the demigod of the moon god gives him the Brahmadanda, which brahmacharis hold. So like that. And then Parvati Devi, the wife of Lord Shiva, she comes and she gives him the first arms. So like that, Vamandev received everything. And on the other hand, what was happening with Shukracharya and Bali Maharaj? So Shukracharya told Bali Maharaj that right now you have obtained everything from Indra, the kingdom, but that was more by force. Because, you served me and I blessed you. You went on that rath and you drove the demigods away and you got his kingdom. But let's become the rightful legal heirs to the kingdom. So he said, let's do 100 Ashwamedha Yagyas, because once you complete 100 Ashwamedha Yagyas, you can rightfully be the king of heaven. So Bali Maharaj was ever ready. He said, yeah, let's do it. So Shukracharya was helping Bali Maharaj conduct all the yagyas, and they had already completed 99 yagyas. And that time someone comes and informs Vaman Dev, when all these gifts were being given to him, that Bali Maharaj is about to commence his 100th Ashwamedha Yagya. And Vaman Dev knew that if he completes that, then rightfully he becomes the king of heaven and he won't be able to take things away from him. So then once he has received these blessings from all the demigods, his mother and father, Vaman Dev in that same dress, he actually rushes to the place where the Bali Maharaj is doing all these 100 Ashwamedha yagyas. And once he arrives there, Bali Maharaj sees that such an effulgent Brahmana has entered into the sacrificial arena. So he stops whatever, sacrifice, the process was going on, and he gets up and he welcomes Bali Maharaj. And, before he welcomes Bali Maharaj, he actually is very attracted, it is described. Very, very attracted to his personality and all that. And on the other hand, Vaman Dev is thinking that because of Aditi mother's request, I have to come here and now I have to take everything away from Bali Maharaj so that I can give it to her other children, my brothers, because obviously the demigods were his brothers now that he had taken birth from Aditi. So I'll have to give everything to Indra back. And over there also there is a beautiful lesson we learn, that when Kashyapa Muni told this, particular thing to Aditi to do, the Payovrata sacrifice, we learn that Guru will generally instruct us only according to our acceptance capacity. He will not give us instructions which we are not able to follow. Just in the same way that Krishna does, gives miseries or gives difficulties. Sometimes he tests his devotees and he gives difficulties only to the extent that his devotees can tolerate. Like we see in the case of the Pandavas. So with the Pandavas went through extreme difficulties. Kunti Maharani prays, let us get all these difficulties again and again because you were there with us and we were remembering you all the time. But Krishna will not give similar difficulties to anybody, any other devotees, because they don't have the tolerance. But the Pandavas had that capability to absorb those miseries and still be devotees and stay in Krishna consciousness. So once, in this regard, there's a beautiful example of Srila Prabhupada. So once Tamal Krishna Maharaj, there was, in the Lilamrita it's mentioned that there was this whole tussle going on between different groups of devotees about the Radha Damodar bus party, which was headed by Tamal Krishna Maharaj and which was doing really well in America. Everywhere the bus party would go, they would make new devotees. They were distributing thousands and thousands of books of Srila Prabhupada. But there were some tussles going on that all the manpower is just going towards the Radha Damodar party. How are we going to look after our temples and all that? So Srila Prabhupada meets Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj knew what Srila Prabhupada will tell. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj said that, rather than giving up the Radha Damodar party service, I better go to China. I might as well go to China. Like that Tamal Krishna Maharaj says to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada doesn't say anything at that time. He just keeps quiet. But the next morning during Mangala Arati, Prabhupada sends his servant to bring Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And when Tamal Krishna Maharaj enters, Prabhupada said, what were you saying yesterday about going to China? So Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, no, Prabhupada, I just casually mentioned it because I wanted to tell you that, the Radha Damodar party, the bus party is doing so well right now. We should not take that service away from me and I should continue with that service traveling around the US. And then Prabhupada says, no, because you said you might as well go to China, you go to China now. And actually Tamal Krishna Maharaj later on was reflecting that Prabhupada made him go to China. Like Tamal Krishna Maharaj protested, vehemently protested, I can't go to China because that territory was completely uncharted. No devotees had gone there, no preaching had happened there, and obviously everyone's scared. Even now people are scared of China. So, very communist regime, he was very scared to go there. But Prabhupada said, no, now that you said, Prabhupada would give these instructions. When Prabhupada was traveling in train also in India once, he actually told his disciples, they came to a station and he said, go down here and go and open a center. And they were not even prepared, they were just traveling with Prabhupada. So Prabhupada sometimes would give this instruction, and with that instruction he would give his empowerment as well to follow that instruction and make it a success. So with Tamal Krishna Maharaj also, he gave him that instruction. Tamal Krishna Maharaj actually went and preached in China, and there was a big revolution he was able to do. And then he was reflecting that Prabhupada gave me this instruction, I was not ready to follow it, but once I accepted, I surrendered to Srila Prabhupada, he gave me the empowerment to then go and do successful preaching in China. So that's one more lesson. The third lesson we learned, that a spiritual master will give instructions only which a disciple can follow. Otherwise, he will not give instructions which a disciple generally cannot follow. So now Vamandev has entered the sacrificial arena, and Bali Maharaj has invited, he has very nicely welcomed Vamandev. And obviously, as is the custom, he offered some charity because Brahmana has come to the sacrificial arena. So he offered some charity to Vamandev, and he said, what would you like? Oh Brahmana, you have come when I'm actually doing these sacrifices. What can be more great fortune for me than that? So please accept some charity from me. Can I give you some gold, silver? Like he offers lots of things. And Vamandev says, no. First you make a sankalpa that you will give me whatever I ask. So he said, okay, I'm making that sankalpa. So with water he tries to, with water they have to make that sankalpa, take that in hand. And Shukracharya immediately understood that this is not some ordinary Brahman dwarf boy who has come here. This is actually none other than Lord Vishnu. So he actually goes and warns Bali Maharaj. He says, don't absolutely promise anything to this boy, because he is actually Vishnu and he has come to take everything away from you. So Bali Maharaj at that time, so the next lesson we can learn here is that if your spiritual master or anybody becomes an obstacle in your Krishna conscious path, you can actually give up that spiritual master. So over here, Shukracharya was preventing him from serving Lord Vishnu, and therefore Bali Maharaj rejected his instruction. He said that I was serving him as a Brahman boy, but if he is the Supreme Lord who has himself come to my doorstep to ask for something, what more fortune can I have than this? It will be it will be a great blessing he'll be giving to me by accepting something from me. So I'm going to go ahead and give. In fact, it is said also when he was going to pour the water out of the Kamandalu, Shukracharya actually went and blocked that with his eye. And Bali Maharaj just poked it, and that's why Shukracharya got actually, I think, one eye or something like that. He allowed the water to pour out by just poking the eye away. So Bali Maharaj rejected the instruction of his Sankalpa to Vamandev that I will give you whatever you ask. So then Vamandev says that I only want 3 steps of land. And then Bali Maharaj was very bewildered. He said that I'm happy, I'm the king of the whole material universe, and you are just asking for 3 steps of land. And look at your size. With your 3 steps, how much can you cover? So Bali Maharaj actually at that point it is said, he said that let me, bring one of my tall demon, followers. They are at least tall, let them take 3 steps. But Vamandev said that no. Satisfaction is one of the qualities of a Brahmana, and I am completely satisfied with the 3 steps. And it is described that before Vamandev actually, when he was entering the sacrificial arena, it is said that obviously on Vamandev, he is Lord Vishnu, so on his chest always Lakshmi Devi is residing. So Vamandev understood that when he enters the sacrificial arena, if Lakshmi Devi is glancing at Bali Maharaj, I will not be able to take anything away from him. So in one of the Sri Vaishnava Acharya's commentary, it is described that therefore what did Vamandev do? Usually, the Uttariya is worn from left to right when you do service and all that. So Vamandev changed the direction of his Uttariya. He wore it from right to left so that the Lakshmi Devi, the Srivatsa gets covered and Lakshmi Devi cannot see Bali Maharaj. And Lakshmi Devi was wondering, what is this going on? Why my husband is doing this so much circus to cover me up? Who is this person? So she wanted to peek out and glance what was going on. So she peeked out a little bit and she was glancing at Bali Maharaj, and she was just intrigued to see what pastime was going to happen and why Vamandev was making all these adjustments and not wearing the Uttariya in the right way it should be worn. So it is said that because she was glancing at Bali Maharaj, ultimately Vamandev could not take everything away and he had to give him Sutalaloka because the blessings of Lakshmi Devi were there. And Sutalaloka is obviously more opulent than the heavenly kingdoms. So it is, that Sri Vaishnava Acharya describes that, Lakshmi Devi, who is obviously an expansion of Srimati Radharani, the Ladini Shakti, she has various roles to play. But one of the role is that she plays the role of a mediator between the Jiva and the Lord. So here also we see that Lakshmi Devi is sort of playing that role of mediator, that Vaman Dev has come to take everything away, but by her glance, she is allowing Bali Maharaj to have something. So then, the Sankalpa is made and he says, no, Brahmana has to be satisfied. I'm just satisfied with my 3 steps of land. I don't want any demon to take any 3 steps of land for me. And then, when Bali Maharaj agrees, he actually expands himself. And we know the pastime that with his first step, he covers all the lower planetary systems. Everything. Right till, Patalok, everything is covered. And then with his second step, he covers all the upper planetary systems. And his feet actually reaches the coverings of the material universe. And with his toe, there is a little hole which comes. He pierces the covering of the material universe. And the causal ocean or the Viraja river, which is separating the material and spiritual world, from there a little trickle comes down. And that trickle was none other than Ganga Mata. And obviously it was, when we say trickle, it's actually the huge causal ocean. So it was going to inundate the whole material universe. And then Lord Shiva agrees. He says, okay, I will take it on my head just to make the flow down, to curb the flow so that it doesn't flood the whole material universe. And from Shiva's jata, just a little stream came out, which is then going through the heavenly planets as Mandakini. And then on our planet, it is called as Ganga. And then she's also flowing down to the hellish planets. So Vamandev took, covered everything with his 2 steps. And then he said to Bali Maharaj, where do I put my 3rd step now? And Bali Maharaj said that, my Lord, generally the person who gives the charity is higher than the charity itself. So I am the person who's giving the charity and I am surrendering myself to you. You put your 3rd step on my head. And that way let me satisfy your desire of, having 3 steps of land. So, and therefore we see that Bali Maharaj is actually, he symbolizes the devotional service. There are 9 processes of devotional service. He symbolizes the devotional service of surrender, surrendering everything to the Supreme Lord. In this pastime, he is doing that, completely surrendering himself and kneeling down, and then Vamandev placed his 3rd step on Bali Maharaj's head. But still, Vamandev said that because you could not satisfy and give me the 3rd step of land, you are an offender. So he actually ties him up. It said he's tied up with a serpent. And he ties him up and he's standing there, and the whole pastime is there, how Prahlad Maharaj also comes over there to take blessings from Vamandev. And he, obviously to also talk about his grandson. And then we see over there that, another important lesson we see over there is that Shukracharya himself then approaches Vamandev. And there is a beautiful verse which Shukracharya says. Because Vamandev was talking to Shukracharya that, do you still have any inhibitions or something like that? And that time Shukracharya says, he says, mantratas tantratas chidram, desha kala ara vastutaha, yat sarvam karoti nischidram, anu sankirtanam tava. So very, very beautiful verse. It was a key memory verse for us when we were studying the 8th canto. What is Shukracharya himself saying? He is the one who actually was stopping Bali Maharaj from giving everything to Vamandev. But he, through this pastime, he also got purified, and he was telling, he's glorifying the Supreme Lord, Vamandev. And he's telling him, he said that there might be many discrepancies in pronouncing the mantras. Somebody might not chant the meter properly, or, they might be forgetting some words in between. So there might be many discrepancies in pronouncing the mantras. There might be many mistakes in observing the regulative principles. There might also be discrepancies in the time, place, person and the paraphernalia. There might be mistakes happening, like the time was not correct when some yagya was done, or the paraphernalia was not maybe clean, or the person who was doing was not very qualified. So we might see there might be many discrepancies in all these areas. But my Lord, when your Lordship's name is chanted, everything becomes faultless and perfect. And therefore, we also chant these, Namo Brahmanya Devaya. We chant all these mantras before we do any deity worship or before we do any pujas. Because whenever the Lord's name is chanted, all other discrepancies are nullified. They all become faultless, and the Lord's holy name makes everything perfect. And we see this, Srila Prabhupada demonstrating this as a live example during the Krishna Balram temple opening. So just to satisfy all the Smartha Brahmins and whoever was living around Vrindavan, he got them to actually perform a sacrifice during the opening ceremony. And once the sacrifice was over, he told the devotees, now you all do loud Sankirtan. Let the real sacrifice begin. So then the devotees did loud Sankirtan to just, welcome the deities and to install the deities and to open the temple. So Prabhupada was obviously realized that this is the essence, that we might do so many other sacrifices, but in Kali Yuga there are always going to be discrepancies. No one is qualified that they might not make any mistakes in pronunciations, or everything is going to be so pure, or we are going to have the perfect time or the perfect place to do the sacrifices. But when you have the Lord's name chanting going on, everything becomes perfect. So that is the biggest lesson which we derive from Lord Vamandev's pastime. And obviously then Vamandev was extremely pleased with Bali Maharaj, and he says that I promise to give you Sutal Loka, and you can rule over there for many, many years, and I will be your personal doorkeeper. So, sometimes the question arises, did Vamandev appear to deceive Bali Maharaj, or did he actually appear to deceive Indra? Because what did he give to Indra? He gave the heavenly kingdom back to Indra. Now, that's a material acquisition. Indra is very attached to his position. He is very attached to his throne. He is very attached to his kingdom. And Vamandev said, okay, take it. This is what you want, you take it. But if we see what he gave to Bali Maharaj, he blessed him with his own personal association. So he not only gave him Sutal Loka, which is, has greater opulence than Indra's planet, but he said, I will be personally there. Because whichever door you come out from, I will be your doorkeeper. And it is said that in, Bali Maharaj's palace had 9 gates, and he would come out from any gate. And Vamandev was always in anxiety. Which gate should I stand so that I'm there as the doorkeeper when Bali Maharaj comes out? And Lakshmi Devi was feeling very bad, it is said in the scriptures. So she actually, because she didn't want her husband to run here and there, or which gate he'll come out from and you go and stand there. So she actually goes and requests Bali Maharaj, can you please decide and come out from one gate only every time, so that my husband doesn't have to go run here and there. So we see Vamandev personally went to Bali Maharaj to give him his association and blessed him with his presence all the time in Sutal Loka. So this is in brief the pastime about Vamandev, how he appeared just to bless Bali Maharaj and just to show to the world the greatness of Bali Maharaj, and how when somebody surrenders, the Lord himself gives. He gets sold. He himself gives himself to that devotee, and he serves him for a long, long time. So we'll now move on to, it's the appearance day of Jiva Goswami as well. So Jiva Goswami is one of the 6 Goswamis. We have the picture here in our temple room as well, and even on the altar. Extremely prominent personality during his time. And Prabhupada says in many, many places, Prabhupada says that there has been no greater scholar than Jiva Goswami who has appeared till now in the Vaishnava lineage. He was the greatest scholar of all time, the greatest Pandit in terms of scriptures, grammar, Sanskrit. There was nobody else who could surpass him in his knowledge of the scriptures and his understanding and his logic of grammar and all that. So Jiva Goswami was actually the nephew of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. So there were 3 brothers. Sanatan Goswami was the eldest, then there was Rupa Goswami, and the youngest one was Vallabh or Anupam Goswami. And Jiva Goswami was the son of this Anupam Goswami. And it is described that very early on in his childhood, he got the association and darshan of Lord Chaitanya. So Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami and Anupam, as we all know the pastime, they were great ministers in the kingdom of the Muslim ruler at that time. And they were serving him very nicely because they were very intelligent. The Muslim ruler completely depended on them for all his decisions. So they held very important portfolios. I think finance and, home minister and all that. So they held very important portfolios in his kingdom. And they were in the service of this Muslim ruler. But all the time in their heart, they were hankering for the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So several letters they wrote to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that they want to leave all this, serving this Yamuna and Mlecha, and they wanted to come to the service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But they didn't receive much response from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and later on, after many, many letters, they got back one reply from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's that famous reply where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells that when a wife has a paramour, when she has another lover, she serves her husband very nicely so that the husband doesn't get any doubt that the wife already has a paramour and, some other lover. So in the same way, you continue serving the Muslim ruler very nicely, and when the time is right, you all will be able to give up everything and dedicate your life fully in the service of Krishna. So when they got this instruction with renewed, happiness, they continued serving this Muslim ruler. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu one day wanted to bless them. So he was actually going to Vrindavan, but he said, okay, on the way we will go to Ramakeli and then we'll go to Vrindavan. Now if you see the map of India during that time or even now, Ramakeli is actually not on the way to Vrindavan, it's very much out of the way. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just wanted to bless Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami and Anupam with his presence. So that's why he took that detour and he went there, and when, they went to take darshan, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami and Anupam went to take darshan. It is said Jiva Goswami was a very little child at that time, but he also got the divine darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he saw how his uncles and father were interacting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how they got blessings. Because during that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu initiated all three of them. So he saw how they got blessings and how they were now going to dedicate their life in the service of Krishna. So it is described that Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami and Anupam left for Vrindavan on the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Jiva Goswami was with his mother. And Jiva Goswami was so attracted to the forms of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even Lord Nityananda was present at that time. So he started worshipping Krishna Balaram deities since his childhood. And it is said he was so attached to his deities that he would even sleep with them. And full day he would be absorbed in their seva. He would be dressing them, making garlands for them, offering them bhoga, putting them to sleep. So all the time he was engrossed in their seva. And once he had a dream also where Krishna Balaram came and they blessed him, and then their form turned into Gaur Nitai's form. So he realized that Gaur Nitai have their mercy on me and they are non-different from Krishna Balaram. So like this, he served his deities for a long time, and when he was hardly 18 or 20 years old, his father passed away. He got the news that his father has left his body on the banks of the Yamuna. And since that time, he became completely disinterested in material life. And later on, his mother also passed away. So then he decided, okay, I don't have anybody over here. He was completely disinterested. He had become detached. So he said, let me go to Navadvip, because Lord Nityananda was still there in Navadvip. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had left the planet, but Lord Nityananda was still there. So he goes to Navadvip. He meets Sachi Mata. He meets Vishnu Priya, the wife of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was all the time worshipping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's deity form. And he also met Lord Nityananda Prabhu and all the other devotees who were there in Navadvip at that time. And it is said Lord Nityananda personally took Jiva Goswami on Navadvip Mandal Parikrama. So even today, what we do, Navadvip Mandal Parikrama, that is the parikrama which Lord Nityananda did for Jiva Goswami. And Bhaktivedanta Thakur, with his transcendental vision, he actually has encaptured this whole parikrama in his Navadvip Dham Mahatmya book. So Lord Nityananda took him to various places, and then after giving him enough association, he gave him the instruction that now you go to Vrindavan and you join your uncles over there and you serve your uncles. But on the way, please go to Varanasi and study under Madhusudan Vachaspati. So Madhusudan Vachaspati was actually the disciple of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was obviously a direct disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who was a very great scholar himself. So Madhusudan Vachaspati had derived all the knowledge from his guru, and now he was running a school in Varanasi, and Jiva Goswami goes and studies under him for few years, studying the scriptures, studying all the books of grammar and all that. And that time it said he was hardly 20, but he became a great scholar. His fame spread all over India because he started writing books at such a young age. He was able to give such beautiful explanations of all these scriptures. So after he had obtained this knowledge, he went to Vrindavan. And when he went to Vrindavan, as soon as he entered, he was greeted very jubilantly by the 5 Goswamis who were there, and also by Bhugarbha Goswami, Loknath Goswami. They all came and embraced him. And Jiva Goswami then went to, because Sanatan Goswami was the eldest, he went to Sanatan Goswami and he said, I want to take initiation from you. But Sanatan Goswami was very humble. He said, no, you take initiation from Rupa Goswami because he is much more qualified than me. So then Jiva Goswami goes to Rupa Goswami and he says, can you please give me initiation? And Rupa Goswami says that before that, I have to test you. So even though Jiva Goswami was such a great scholar, Rupa Goswami engaged him in all menial services. So his services were to clean the ashram, to bring water for Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami's bath, to, whenever they pass, where nature's call they answer, cleaning all that area. So his service, and also he engaged him in the service of Radha Damodar deities, which Rupa Goswami had. So just serving the deities, making garlands for them. So he was just engaged in all these services. And Jiva Goswami was completely happy. Not that he wanted scholarly services only. He was completely happy serving his uncle and his guru like that. And then Rupa Goswami was very pleased and he gave him initiation. And Rupa Goswami then started also engaging him in, because Rupa Goswami was writing so many books, he would engage him in proofreading and editing all his books. So that is the service he started engaging him. And once it is said that there was a very great scholar called Rupa Narayan who visits Vrindavan. And this Rupa Narayan was a very, very proud, arrogant scholar. So he would travel all over India and he would defeat people and he would make them sign like a certificate, like a decree. He would make them sign saying that I have been defeated by Rupa Narayan, he is the greatest scholar. So he came to Vrindavan and he had heard a lot about Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami's scholarship. So he thought, okay, I think I've found my match. This is the next person I want to defeat now in debate. So he, with that intention in mind, he went to Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. And he said, look, I have defeated, he had so many certificates from him, traveling all over India. So he said, I have defeated so many scholars and they have all declared that I am the greatest scholar and they have accepted their defeat in these certificates that they have signed. So I want to engage. I've heard you all are the two greatest scholars. Everyone told me I should come to you and I want to engage in debate with you. So Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami were completely humble. They were completely absorbed in writing and serving Lord Krishna. They did not want to waste their time at all in all these mundane debates and all that. So they told Rupa Narayan, they said that, these people just like that glorify, they have a habit of glorifying Vaishnavas. Actually, we both don't have any knowledge at all. Somehow they feel that we have written some books, but nothing. We are nowhere near you. So why you want to waste your time engaging in debate with fools like us? We are happy to sign the decree right now only. And we will say, you have, defeated us and you have won. And you are the greatest scholar. So Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami just signed that letter and they gave to Rupa Narayan. And he started going all around Vrindavan proudly showing off that letter. That see, I defeated Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. They have accepted I am the greatest scholar and they have accepted their defeat in front of me. So this went into the ears of Jiva Goswami. And Jiva Goswami could not tolerate it at all. He said that how can my uncles be defeated by this particular person? I can't believe it only. They are such great scholars. So Jiva Goswami tells Rupa Narayan that it is not possible that my uncles can get defeated because I know they are great scholars. So he says that, okay, they were not, debating with you, but I am going to sit here and debate with you because I know I can defeat you and that will be on behalf of my uncles. So for 7 days on the bank of the Yamuna, Rupa Narayan and Jiva Goswami had a debate. Continuous debate they had, and at the end of the 7th day, Rupa Narayan's pride was completely smashed to pieces because Jiva Goswami defeated him, like fully and wholly he defeated him. And then, Rupa Narayan had to write and give that Jiva Goswami has defeated me and he is the greatest scholar of all. And Jiva Goswami very happily took that letter to his uncles and showed them, especially to Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami wanted to teach a lesson to the whole world through Jiva Goswami. So he knew Jiva Goswami had done this to establish his, guru's position, not for, proving that he is a great scholar or for, one-upmanship on Rupa Narayan himself, but it was more to protect the dignity of his own guru that he had done that. But still Rupa Goswami wanted to teach a lesson to all of us through him. So he said that, Jiva, what have you done? He showed external anger. And he said, what have you done? We didn't want to waste our time and you have wasted 7 days debating with this person. Looks like you are very attached to pride, prestige and recognition and that is why you have done that. So you cannot, pride and arrogance cannot be there in Vrindavan at all. We are banning you, I'm banning you today, you go out of Vrindavan. You have no place in Vrindavan. Now Jiva Goswami could have actually said, if it is us, we would say, but I did it for you. we would explain, we would try to explain, we would become a little defensive and we would say that it was only to protect your dignity I did. But Jiva Goswami in his heart fully he accepted, I am a proud person. My Guru Maharaj has recognized correctly. I am not fit to live in Vrindavan. I should leave Vrindavan and go away. So thinking like this with full humility in his heart, Jiva Goswami left Vrindavan and went away, and he went to Mathura. And he started living in a very deep cave, very small deep cave, and he started fasting. He would hardly eat anything, and he was all the time crying out loudly Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And Sanatan Goswami, because Sanatan Goswami used to tour Vrindavan a lot, so Sanatan Goswami came to know from some of the Vrajavasis that Jiva Goswami is almost fasting himself to death, and he is doing so many austerities just to atone for a sin, the sin which he actually has not even committed. So Sanatan Goswami, because he was the elder brother, he could go and instruct Rupa Goswami. So he goes and tells him, he says that, Rupa Goswami, are you following all the principles of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu nicely? And Rupa Goswami said, yeah, I think I'm following. But again, Rupa Goswami himself was so humble. He said, you feel I'm not following any principle, please guide me. And Sanatan Goswami said, what about the principle of Jiva Daya? You know how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught Jiva Daya, Vaishnava Seva. So he said Jiva Daya means compassion to jivas, to conditioned souls. But obviously he was intending it as a pun, because Jiva is also the name of Jiva Goswami. So Rupa Goswami immediately understood that Sanatan Goswami is not very happy that Jiva Goswami has been banned from Vrindavan. So he requests Sanatan Goswami that you only bring him back and I will actually seek forgiveness and I will take him back. So Sanatan Goswami goes and brings Jiva Goswami back, and Rupa Goswami embraces him and once again accepts him in his service. And similar pastime happens again when Vallabhacharya comes over there. So Vallabhacharya was a contemporary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in India we see there are lots of temples of Srinath Ji which are actually have been started by Vallabhacharya from the Rudra Sampradaya. So Vallabhacharya actually comes over there and he was writing some book and he wanted Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami to have a look. And both of them said, because Vallabhacharya was an elderly person, so both of them said, no, how can we find any faults in your book? Whatever you have written is perfect. In fact, why don't you correct my book? And he gave him his Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. And Vallabhacharya said, yeah, I can see there is this one particular thing which you can actually word it differently. But let me take the manuscript with me. I will read and I will tell you if there are any changes that have to be done. And like this, when Vallabhacharya goes to the bank of Yamuna, again Jiva Goswami meets him there. And Jiva Goswami tells him that there cannot be any discrepancy. Whatever Rupa Goswami writes is perfect. How can there be any discrepancy? So Vallabhacharya says, no, but I found this particular verse. There is this discrepancy which can be corrected. And Jiva Goswami actually explains to Vallabhacharya that no, Rupa Goswami is meaning this. And this verse is as it is still perfect because he meant it in this way. And Vallabhacharya, again, he was also a great soul, very humbly he accepts that, and he goes back to Rupa Goswami and he gives the manuscript back to him. And he says that your disciple Jiva Goswami actually opened my eyes. Your manuscript is perfect, there is no defect. He explained to me what you meant by this particular verse. So I'm very sorry I took your manuscript, but it's all perfect. And again Rupa Goswami was upset with Jiva Goswami. He said, how can you correct? He's an elderly Vaishnava. How can you correct his understanding? Whatever he's saying, we have to accept. So again he says, you're not fit to live in Vrindavan, and he sends him out. And this time Jiva Goswami goes on the bank of Yamuna and he starts living inside a crocodile hole. And again all the time he's just chanting Hare Krishna loudly. And sometimes some Rajvasis would go and put some wheat flour or something like that. So once in a few days he would just mix that wheat flour with Yamuna water and he would eat it, just to sustain his life. But because he was living in that hole continuously, no sunlight, he started getting very diseased. So again Sanatan Goswami came and chastised Rupa Goswami and he told him, you accept him back. So Rupa Goswami with his own hands nursed Jiva Goswami back. So these are some of the glories of Jiva Goswami, how he was a great Vaishnava, the greatest scholar, but still he was humility personified. And once Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami left the world, he was made as the head of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya clan which was there in Vrindavan, and he actually created a whole library of Gaudiya Vaishnava literature. He collected the writings of all the Goswamis, of all the great Acharyas, and he made a library, and he asked Srinivas Acharya, Shyamanand Pandit and Narottam Das Thakur to take all those books to Bengal and on the way keep preaching. So these are the glories of Jiva Goswami, how he, established Vaishnavism. He was also a great scholar. In fact, it said he also had the audience of King Akbar. And many times King Akbar would help, because Akbar was very, very enamored and very inspired by Jiva Goswami. So it is said King Akbar had helped in the excavation of many holy places in Vrindavan. And that time paper was very rare. Everything was written on leaf manuscripts. So paper was very rare, and Akbar was once very pleased, and he asked Jiva Goswami, ask me what you want. And Jiva Goswami said, give me some paper. Because he wanted all these scriptures to be captured for a long, long time. And that way Akbar supplied him paper, and he wrote all these scriptures, and he translated, and he wrote so many tikas on his, Guru Maharaj, Rupa Goswami and Sanata Goswami's writings. And now, last 15 minutes, we will speak about Bhaktivinoda Thakur quickly. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur obviously is known as the 7th Goswami. We discussed about the 6 Goswamis, and of that we discussed about Jiva Goswami in detail. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is known as the 7th Goswami. There is a book also, 7th Goswami, which has been written by Rupa Vilas Prabhu, who is the disciple of Srila Prabhupada. It seems when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was present on this planet, he actually wrote a letter to his son Lalita Madhav. And with this son Lalita Madhav, it is said even Srila Prabhupada had associated a lot. So he wrote a letter to Lalit Madhav, and he had written his whole life, like a biography he had written and sent to Lalit Madhav. And the 7th Goswami book, which Rupa Vilas Prabhu has written, is based on that letter which Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself had sent to Lalit Madhav. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a great, great Acharya. He was a Grahastha Acharya, and therefore we can learn so many lessons from him. He established so much in Krishna consciousness. So many of his things have come true. His predictions have come true. This whole Namahatta concept was also by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Even, preaching all over the world. These were some of the predictions which Bhaktivinoda Thakur had done. So we have so much to learn from him, because he was a Grahastha Acharya, and as Grahasthas we can relate to his life and get inspired by his life. So he was born in opulence in 1838 in Birnagar. But slowly once his father died, the whole family fell into poverty, and he was then raised by his uncle. And at a very young age, it is described, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because his uncle was actually a great literary scholar, and he was the editor of a newspaper at that time. And that was in English. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because that was British India going on. And it seems that when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born in that British India, the Britishers were systematically trying to completely eradicate Indian culture. They were completely trying to, there was Gurukul system which they completely eradicated. There was, so much Vaishnavism which they wanted to eradicate. They wanted people to start becoming ashamed of their own culture and start thinking that everything British and Western is what is to be accepted. They started becoming ashamed of Sanskrit. They thought English is the language of the gentleman. So, all these things were happening when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born. So he used to help in the early days. He used to help his uncle with editing. He was hardly 11 or 12 years old. And he would help in editing all these newspaper articles. And he was married off at the age of 12 to a young girl who was 5-6 years old. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur went to college when he was 18 or 19. And over there he learnt English, he learned many languages, Persian, Urdu. And he wrote a 2-part epic in English which was called as Porus, which was based on the life of King Porus. Like, people who are from India, we had it in history. We had to learn about King Porus. So he wrote about the life of King Porus when he was 18 or 19 years old. And then he returned to his village. And he saw his village was completely destroyed. So, and there was nothing left. So he brought his mother and his grandmother, and obviously he had to look after them. And also his first son was born. Achyutananda was his first son who was born at that time. And his wife unfortunately passed away during childbirth when his first son was born. So then he married second wife known as Bhagavati Devi, who then stayed with him throughout his life, and from whom all the other children, including Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was born. So as a means of livelihood, Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually took up the position of a school teacher. He did not want to get into business. He did not want to get into any other, work which would entail him to become very materialistic. So he became a school teacher, and then he was promoted to become a headmaster. And slowly he became the deputy magistrate of West Bengal. And it is said that is the greatest position that can be held by any Indian under the British rule. And he was and that time he was coming across so many literatures. He was very influenced by Christian theology over Advaita philosophy. So he would spend hours and hours comparing Christian reformers' writing with Vedic scriptures and all that. And during his religious, pursuit, he came across the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it is said that became the turning point in his life when he was 20 or 22 years old. And that time, then he said that, no, this is the essence of Vaishnavism. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching should be made known to everybody in this world. So he became the deputy magistrate. He was, it said that, especially about talking about his time schedule. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is said would not even waste a single moment in his life. His schedule was so pakka, his timetable was so pakka in the day that he would hardly spend a few hours sleeping, and all his time was either spent in solving cases or it was spent in translating literatures. And we see Prabhupada was also emulating Bhaktivinoda Thakur in terms of writing books and hardly sleeping. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur would, from 10 to 1, he would be in his court where he would be solving cases. And it said some person, other judges would take 1 or 2 hours sometimes, or 6-7 hours to solve one case. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 10 minutes, 15 minutes could solve one case. Because he had such clear intelligence, he could immediately make out who is guilty, who is not guilty, and he would pronounce his judgment very quickly. So because he was so efficient, he could solve many, many cases, and the Britishers valued that. So to save his time, they had made a special train from his house to the court. So even now if we see, when you go to Swananda Sukhada Kunj in Godruma Dweep, where Bhakti Vinod Thakur used to live, there is a train line which goes from there, especially just to take Bhakti Vinod Thakur to the court, so his time gets saved. So he would solve all these cases very quickly, and he would hardly sleep for 1 or 2 hours in the night, and then he would get up and he would translate the whole night. And then by 4:30 or something, he would sit down for chanting, and for 2-3 hours he would just sit and chant. So if we see in Swananda Sukhada Kunj, there is a very narrow room. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to take darshan. It's a narrow room without any windows, and over there Bhakti Vinod Thakur would keep a towel on top of his head, and he would continuously chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And then once his chanting was over, he would just take some rest, and then he would have his breakfast, he would answer correspondence, and he would also preach little bit. Sometimes some visitors would come, so he would preach to them. And then he would again go to the court till 1 o'clock, solve cases, come back for lunch, take a little bit of rest, sit and translate books, and then again go back to the court in the afternoon, solve cases and come back. So this is how not even a single moment he would waste. And it is said he has written 75 scriptures, 75 books Bhakti Vinod Thakur has written, and countless songs. So many of the songs which we sing today are all Bhakti Vinod Thakur. The beautiful book Sharanagati, where there are such beautiful songs Bhakti Vinod Thakur has written, which all of us are singing. And this whole concept of preaching into the Western world, Namahatta preaching, all this was done by Bhakti Vinod Thakur. In fact, Prabhupada would very fondly speak of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and he would say that generally the grandfather is more merciful than the father. And we see that even in our daily life, we see that the parents are always more loving to the grandchildren rather than their own children. So, Prabhupada would always say this about him. In fact, there's a very beautiful pastime when Prabhupada was also present on this planet. So, Prabhupada once was not very well. So, he told one of his disciples, go and make some hot halwa for me. If I eat that hot halwa, I will feel better. Now, this disciple went to the kitchen, but there was no semolina. Because generally halwa is made with rava or semolina, but he saw there was wheat rava. So he said, okay, let me make halwa with this. So he made halwa with wheat rava and he took it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, no, this is made of wheat rava. Why you didn't make with semolina? You go and make halwa with semolina. I don't want to have this. So this devotee came back in the kitchen and he was very upset. And he was feeling a bit sad that Prabhupada did not accept my service. I made it so lovingly for him. And there is no semolina. What do I do now? So like that, he was a bit sad, and there was a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he just saw that picture and he prayed. He prayed that generally the grandfather is more merciful than the father. You please show some mercy and you at least accept this halwa. Since my father, my spiritual father, Prabhupada is not accepting. And as soon as he had done that prayer to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada called him again. And he said, bring that halwa, I will eat it. So we see, Prabhupada also fondly used to speak that about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that whatever, Bhaktivinoda Thakur could have flooded the entire world with Krishna consciousness, same with my Guru Maharaj, but they left some work to be done by this insignificant servant of theirs. Like that, Prabhupada would always speak about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And it is said also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had actually made 3 predictions. Prabhupada said that out of those 3 predictions, one of the prediction was that there will be an Adbhut Mandir, where people from all walks of life will come and sing and dance together, and they will sing Jai Sachinandan from every country. They will come and chant together in Mayapur, and there will also be an Adbhut Mandir that will be made. And the third prediction was that there will be a personality who will come in the future, who will take the message of Lord Chaitanya overseas, like beyond the 7 samundar, beyond the 7 seas. He will take that message of Lord Chaitanya to everybody in the world, and in every town and village, the name of Lord Chaitanya will be heard. And all the 3 predictions of Bhaktivinoda Thakur have come true. In fact, when Srila Prabhupada was trying to acquire the land in Mayapur, Tamal Krishna Maharaj was working very hard to get that land for Srila Prabhupada. And ultimately, he got that land. And once he got that land, there was a huge flood. And we know in Mayapur it keeps happening. If it rains, it can actually become completely flooded. And that time, Srila Prabhupada started having second thoughts. And he said that, if we are not able to build a temple in that land, in Mayapur, then, let's go and build it in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's birthplace in Bir Nagar. So we see how attached Prabhupada was to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But then ultimately again he decided that no, let's go and build in Mayapur since you've obtained this land with so much difficulty. And then, the temple construction started. There were so much obstacles that were coming. Cement was very rare in those days. The land was completely infested with mosquitoes. The disciples were continuously falling sick. But Srila Prabhupada, just to encourage his disciples, he said that if you build this, because this was one of the predictions of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that there will be an Adbhut Mandir which will come over here. So Prabhupada said, if you build this temple, Bhaktivinoda Thakur will personally come and take you back to Godhead. And this is the prediction. Even we see right now the temple of Vedic Planetarium is being built. And obviously that's the Adbhut Mandir which Bhaktivinoda Thakur predicted about. And he was very, very pleased. Srila Prabhupada was very pleased to give that as an offering to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And one of the main achievements of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, without whom we would not have even known that Mayapur exists, was him discovering the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because it was completely lost. In fact, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was going to retire and he was going to Vrindavan. He had announced his retirement to the British government and he said, I want to resign as the magistrate and I want to go to Vrindavan. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came in his dream and he said that, no, don't go to Vrindavan. Go back to Navadvip. Please continue working for some more time because you have to achieve something very important in Navadvip. So he comes back and he's staying in the Rani Dharmashala on the bank of the Ganga. And that time Bhaktivinoda Thakur sees a light coming, an effulgence coming from under a tree on the other side of the Ganga. And nobody else was able to see it except Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Only they could see, both could see that effulgence. So next day Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes to that place and he sees that there are so many tulsi plants over there. And then he inquires from some of the elders of that place and he goes and studies the old maps of Mayapur in great detail, of Nadia, Navadvip, he studies in great detail and he realizes that actually the Ganga had changed its course in the last 500 years, but the actual birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was that one, what we call present day as Yoga Peeth. So, and then he had done his study and he had asked with the elders and he had also got that vision of the light coming out and he cross-checked with maps, but he did not want to make any decision on his own. So then he calls Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who was the Vaishnav Shiromani at that time. And he calls him to confirm. And we know the famous pastime. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj was so old that his eyelids were completely drooped and somebody had to lift his eyelid up to open his eyes also. And he could not walk. His servant used to always carry him in a basket. But as soon as he came near that birthplace which Bhaktivinoda Thakur wanted him to validate, he jumped out of the basket and he started loud, jumping up and down. Several feet he was going up. The person who couldn't walk is now jumping up and down and crying loudly, Ei Mora Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is the birthplace of my Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Like that, he started chanting loudly. So with the blessings of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, we also have the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discovered. Otherwise, it was lost to the world. So these are some of the pastimes of Bhakti Vinod Thakur and some things that we can learn from his life and Jiva Goswami's life and Vamanadev's life. Sorry, we went a bit overboard, but we wanted to do justice to all three personalities. Any comments, corrections or questions? Yes, so Prabhuji, it is said on the appearance day of Acharyas, they are very merciful, or even any personality like Janmashtami, on that day Krishna is very merciful, like that. On their appearance days, the Acharyas are very merciful. So yes, one of the ways is to pray to them on their appearance day, especially invoking their blessings, because you are very merciful, it's your appearance day, so give me your blessings. I can follow in the footsteps, your footsteps, and imbibe little bit of Krishna Bhakti that you had. But the other way also we invoke their blessings is studying the scriptures, studying their books, so that we understand what their instructions were, what their mood were. So studying about their life and studying about what they preached in their life. Both these types of books. So that is another way we can, pray for their blessings. And so because unless we know what personality they were, what pastimes they had, how they lived their life, how will we get inspired then to follow in their footsteps? So these are the two ways, prayers and also studying their life and studying the scriptures that they have written. Okay, we'll end the class here. Grantraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki, Srila Jiva Goswami ki, Shri Vamandev ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande.